Hi, I'm Celine Fondevalt, a product manager for automotive networks at NI. As vehicle networks grow increasingly complex, so too does the testing of the ECUs on those networks, which is why NI has developed the XNet driver to provide as much flexibility and control as possible to test engineers. One key feature of the XNet driver, which powers NI's automotive networks hardware, is the XNet IP Stack. The driver actually has its own IP stack, which is completely separate from the native OS stack. This provides several benefits, from the ability to easily address multiple DUTs with the same IP address, which is what I'm going to demonstrate today, to encapsulation from the native OS stack, which often means less scrutiny from corporate IT policies when setting up network configurations for your testers. Additionally, there's flexibility in the number of VLAN tags you can configure and portability, since configuration happens programmatically with one API for both Windows and Linux. The result is portable and very reproducible. So without further ado, I'll dive into our multi-DUT testing demo. So it's actually quite common to have to test multiple DUTs with the same IP address in automotive testing. You can imagine an ECU in a vehicle has a unique IP address in that vehicle, but if you bring several of that ECU together for testing like endurance testing or functional test, suddenly you have one tester with multiple ECUs that have the same IP address, which Windows or your native OS tends to not like and typically errors out. So what I have here hardware-wise is the XNet PXIe 8523 card, which is 4 ports of 100 meg/1 gig base T1 automotive Ethernet. And I'm just using it with a simple loopback to demonstrate the same IP address can be used in the system. If I start using Windows, I can actually view all 4 ports of the module here, and that's because that module has an Intel chip that means it's viewable with native OS as well. Not every XNet card has that multiple functionality. Some of them only work with the IP stack, but here I can see all 4 ports showing up in Windows as I would expect. If I try and make it so that 2 of these ports have the same IP address, I'm going to get an error. So this first port has the IP address 11, and if I try and force the second port to have that same IP address, I'm going to get an error because, as I said, Windows really does not like multiple devices with the same IP address. No worries though, because XNet makes this very easy to configure. So what I have here is a modification of a shipping example in which I have a server and client application, again in a loopback configuration. And as you can see here, I have the same IP address used multiple times in both the server and client. And so I'm going to run this, and in a moment I'll see my data coming through. There we go, as I expected. And then I actually am going to go back to this Windows configurator, and you can see that none of the ports are visible, and that's because the XNet IP stack has taken over, and so we can no longer use the Windows stack. So if I go into NI Max, I can see the XNet IP stack information. I can see my card here with the 4 ports. This button will show me the IP stack information. And then if I click into the 2 ports here, I will be able to see they have the same IP address as I would expect. Ta-da! Okay. So the last thing I'll show is a look into the code here. So if I stop these from running, go into the block diagram here, you can see, as I said, this is a modification of a shipping example. We're not doing anything crazy. But something that's nice, as I mentioned earlier, is that our configuration is programmatically created. If I want to, I can actually export the JSON file that was created there and use that to deploy the same configuration across multiple operating systems, testers, etc. So it's a really easy way to scale your system. And that's the rest of it. So that's it for the demo today. Again, pretty simple but impactful. If you've ever tried to address multiple DUTs with the same IP address without the XNet IP stack, you probably recognize that it can create a lot of headache. And so the IP stack makes it very easy, in addition to providing extra flexibility and control when setting up your network configuration for your ECUs. Thanks so much for watching.